You're listening to Breaking the Bottle Legacy with Molly Watts, episode 47. Hi, I'm Molly. After a lifetime living under the influence of family alcohol abuse, spending more than 30 years worrying about alcohol and my own drinking, believing I had an unbreakable daily drinking habit, I changed my relationship with alcohol forever. If you want to change your drinking habits, then Breaking the Bottle Legacy is for you. My goal is to help you create a peaceful relationship with alcohol, past, present, and future. Each week, I'll focus on real science and using your own brain to change your relationship with alcohol. Nothing has gone wrong. You're not broken. You're not sick. It's not your genes. And creating peace is possible. I'm here to help you do it. Let's start now. Well, hello and welcome or welcome back to Breaking the Bottle Legacy with me, your host, Molly Watts, coming to you from an absolutely awful rainy cats and dogs, Oregon. For the past couple of days, it's just been, lots of it coming down, and it's coming down this morning. But hey, it's Friday, so that's a good thing. And I am super excited about this podcast episode. I am talking with Beej Christie Karpen, and Beej is a certified transformational life coach. She is an alternative therapist. She specializes in harm reduction psychotherapy, somatic experiencing, mindfulness-based stress reduction, and clinical hypnosis. So an alternative therapist, and she is a sponsor for moderation management. She helps people who are drinking excessively to bring their drinking back into moderate levels. And she's been doing that for quite a while. And so Beej and I just had, and by the way, she shared with me at the very end of this podcast that she is, before she did this, she is a professional oboe player. How cool is that? Lives in New York City, is a professional oboe player, and was a professional oboe player for most of her life until she started to take on this work. And so love this conversation, and I think you will enjoy hearing from her. All sorts of resources on her website, which we talk about at the end. And she actually offers a free meditation every Tuesday, which is there available on her website as well, which I really encourage you to take advantage of. A free meditation class. It's great. Here is my conversation with Beej Christie Karpen. Good morning, Beej. Thank you so much for joining me on Breaking the Bottle Legacy. I just appreciate you taking the time. I'm super excited about the conversation we're going to have today.
Me too. Thanks, Molly. Thanks so much for having me.
So, first of all, I just gave a brief introduction on who you are, kind of what you do, who you work with, your commitment and help with moderation management, which thank you so much. Everybody appreciates that. But give me a little bit of the background on how you first decided that, because you've been working pretty extensively with overdrinkers for quite a few years now. Where did that call to you come from? How did you decide this is where you wanted to go?
Well, I had a funny experience myself where I was wanting to explore my own drinking and feeling like it was at a point where it was a little bit too more than I was comfortable with.
Mm-hmm.
But there just didn't seem to be a lot of middle ground. Like I found myself like, oh gosh, if I go talk to somebody, they're going to tell me I'm an alcoholic and I need to abstain,
Right.
and that didn't feel right to me. And so I actually actually did speak to a therapist that I was seeing at the time, and she told me to go to AA. But that to me that felt like such a um, I felt so betrayed in a way because I felt like, we're here talking about this divorce that I just went through and how I'm really having a hard time struggling with these emotions. And here's, good for me. I found a way of helping myself through them, but then now the solutions become a little bit of the problem. And instead of kind of treating that along with everything else that was going on with me, it was like, well, go over there, let AA fix that, and then, and then we'll work with
Right.
everything else. It didn't make sense to me.
Right.
Um, so it took another several years before I kind of decided. I woke up one day and I said, I don't want to keep doing this. And I feel like I cannot possibly be the only person in the universe who has, is like drinking more than they would like to, but is not, whatever, an
But not
alcoholic
identifying with the label of
is.
alcoholic.
Exactly. So I found moderation management.
Hmm.
I found a harm reduction therapist. I found Buddhist meditation, and pretty quickly became a moderate drinker.
I love that. First of all, I love the fact that, you didn't want to have to take on the label of alcoholic just to be able to address what you felt was a habit that was probably just not serving you, or something that, you were turning to alcohol, using alcohol in a way that then ultimately, as you said, kind of became more of a problem than a solution for you. I think that you're spot on. Obviously, we talk a lot about around here that there's a black and white mentality. And you and I
Mm,
were just talking about this a little bit before we started. This whole idea of over drinking, right? Or problematic drinking.
yeah.
There's such a narrative in society on what that looks like. And tell me your ideas around that. What is your, I know you said before when I mentioned the diseased and broken model to you,
Mm.
you kind of, it hurt your heart. Tell
Hmm.
me more about, I mean,
Yeah. Well, I think people that use any kind of substance or eating
yeah,
disordered
right. Oh,
people, it's
sure.
very
Anything.
similar.
Right. Yeah.
Anything, or over tweeting, over
Right.
shopping, all of these things. They're something to make the nervous system feel safe. There's some way of, how can I feel okay? I'm not handling my emotions or the situations in my life in a skillful enough way. I need something else to make me feel okay. And so people take on these addictions, quote
I
unquote,
call
or
them
habits.
buffering. It's a
Buffering, yeah.
buffering habit, or buffering,
Hmm.
whatever. And you're right. It's not, I mean, smoking, food,
Hmm.
uh,
Hmm.
shopping,
Right,
right? I mean,
right.
all of it.
Yeah, yeah. So it doesn't mean that you're something or you
Right.
have some disease or you're some label. It just means that you're human. It means
Right.
you're a human being who has pain and suffering like every other human being. It's just how you've taught yourself to cope with that pain and suffering. And then
So,
it becomes habitual, right? Then the habits get dug deeper and deeper.
so you mentioned kind of the, the nervous system. So,
Mhm.
somatic experience, this is something that I know you're well trained in and you've done a lot of research in, and I'm not as familiar with. So explain to me what that means, the somatic experience for us.
Sure. Um, The somatic experiences really has to do with how emotions are felt in the body. So I did a 3-year intensive trauma training called Somatic Experiencing through Trauma Healing Network. Um, and basically, in a nutshell, it's
Yeah,
it's
yeah. Boil down
yeah.
3 years, ladies.
It's helping people have access to or understand and see clearly that they're always having a dual experience. They're um, they're having the experience of what's happening out here in the world. My boss is yelling at me or something, whatever's coming up. But their body is responding. Their nervous system is also responding. So it's a way of really tuning in to those physical sensations. We might call it the emotional body rather than the outside physical body. The physical body might tense up too. There might be things that happen when you feel anger or stress. There might be a tension in
Right.
the hands or the shoulders, but there also might be a more subtle experience going on of like, oh, when you kind of deepen into that experience, you might notice, oh, my heart is feeling a little fluttery, or my belly is feeling kind of churny, that
Hmm.
kind of thing. So with somatic experiencing, if we were to do an entire session on SE, which I rarely do, I usually just take pieces of it, maybe 10 minutes or so. But what you would be doing is really following your somatic experience. You would literally be tracking it, and we might not even talk very much at all. We
Hmm.
might start with a story that brings up the activation, and then I might say, let's pause here for a moment. and just see how your nervous system's responding, how your body's responding to this right now. And just let them really track. And it's amazing because it feels sometimes when we feel these sensations, it feels like, oh my God, this is solid. It's never moving. It is anger feels like this, tight.
Mm-hmm.
But then when you kind of relax into it, you'll notice that it is constantly changing, it's constantly moving. And so you find ways to help the client. The idea is not to just do it in the session, but for them in life, when they feel these sensations, oh, that's my body telling me it's uncomfortable with something. Let's see if we can find a way to discharge, to release these sensations. And it might be simply by imagining it moving through the body, or just following it move through the body, or it might be something more concrete, like getting up and doing a few, lion's breaths with movement or something like that. It might be something to get the trauma out of the body, because the body holds on to, and the nervous system holds on to all of our past traumas and experiences. And by traumas, I mean like the wider definition. It could
Right.
be like
Right.
capital T trauma, like actual, events, single events, or it could just be like a pervasive trauma that of growing up in a family where you just somehow you felt kind of like an orphan in your own family, or you didn't feel connected with your caregivers, your parents, or whomever was uh, giving you care. Things like that can really stay in the body and the nervous system without us knowing it, almost like a fish not knowing it's in water, right? It's just like that's just how it is. But then when you bring attention to it, you see that, oh, okay, and you don't have to go back to, oh, when I was 3, this happened.
Right.
You might, but it's not necessary. What you're working more with is how your body's responding now, and
Mm-hmm.
how can you help move that through so that you're able to clear things up in your mind and just move ahead, living, with a more skillful life, a more easeful life.
So this is real. I love all this. It's really, I mean, it parallels so much of what I talk about, and I don't use the same terminology in terms of the somatic experience. That's very, I've never, like I said, I've never heard that, but used it described that way before, but it's similar to what I talk about in terms of being able to articulate how a feeling happens in your body, and really just
Mm,
the noticing the sensations and noticing what happens in the body when you are experiencing an emotion. Because I think that something that you're touching on, and something that I talk about in terms of just managing your mind, is a lot of us are really scared of our emotions, right? I mean, some of
mm.
those big emotions, like they sound really bad. By the way, everyone, if you can't, Beej is in New York City. I can hear it there in the background, so you're gonna hear it.
I don't even hear
I know,
it.
of course. I love it. I can hear New York, which is awesome. Anyhow, we're afraid of, like, we can't handle these big emotions. But when you become more skilled at recognizing what's going on in the body with just, with, let's say, anger, anger is one that scares
Hmm.
people. We don't want to experience anger too
Yeah.
much, right?
Yeah. Hmm.
What I've noticed is when people become more skillful at recognizing and articulating and understanding what's going on in their body, even just that knowledge, being able to see it and feel,
Hmm.
describe it,
Hmm.
often helps it dissipate. It's
Yeah.
not quite as scary if you can just say, okay, this is what happens. I can handle this. I
Yeah.
can do
Yeah.
this.
Yeah.
Would you,
Yeah.
do you agree with that? That sometimes that,
Absolutely.
yeah, that
Yeah.
being able to articulate and see things like that, it helps us become better mind managers, or better able at processing those emotions.
Hmm. Yeah. It's like the rain practice. Are you familiar with that? RAIN.
No, tell me.
Okay. That's a mindfulness practice.
Okay.
It's kind of what you're saying. It's R stands for recognize. Recognize the emotions here. Oh, hello. I've seen you before. Hi, anger.
Right.
Okay. Sometimes when I teach this, I teach it with puppets. Like I have this lion for
Right.
lion puppet. But you recognize it's here.
Uh-huh.
And then the A is for allow and accept. It's okay. It's part of being human. We all feel anger
Right.
from time to time. Sometimes when it just feels so solid, it feels like this is me right now. And instead of saying, I am angry, you might just say, oh, anger's here.
Mm-hmm.
So it's like a way of it's visiting. It's going
Mm-hmm.
to move on eventually. I know it hasn't stayed the last time. It, it comes and
Yeah.
goes. So, and then the I is for investigation, exactly what you're talking about. So you investigate where in your body, but also the stories that the mind might be creating around the
Right.
anger. Like, and this involves also the second arrow the Buddha would talk about, which is um, the one we're pointing at it ourselves, right? We might be criticized, someone else might criticize us, it makes us angry, but that we realize that, oh, it's actually because I'm criticizing myself too. Like
Right.
there's a part of me that's getting on board and going, yeah, and your
Yeah.
second grade teacher said that too, and
Right.
you're
Right.
you're
Right.
nobody likes you, and all this stuff that goes on. So you start to like kind of recognize some of that stuff too that's happening, and then you kind of peel it back a little bit and say, oh, okay, what's happening right now is this person said this to me. I'm having this response. And then the N is for nurture, where you can actually maybe go to that part of the body that's feeling activated. And there's nothing like self-touch. It's crazy that in the trauma training, the last module was supposed to be a touch module, but we couldn't do it in person, so they switched it around um, to self-touch, which was so much more helpful for people because this is
Sure.
something they can do on their own.
Right.
And plus, we're seeing everybody virtually anyway now. So, and this is just an incredible, powerful thing. Even a hand on the heart for 60 seconds brings up, they say, enough oxytocin to stave off a panic attack. So
Wow.
just finding, or maybe it's in your belly where you're feeling the anger. Maybe put a hand on the heart, hand on the belly, just breathe gently into those places. And notice anywhere else that's tensing in your body. Might be your shoulders. Maybe you could tighten them up a little more and then, let them go,
Right.
relax. And it's amazing how you can shift um, your experience of your nervous system just by doing a few little things like
I love that. That just probably helped. So rain, everybody. I'll make sure to link
that.
all that in the show notes, but you definitely, that probably just helped people right there. Um,
Tara Brach does a wonderful meditation on it. So I highly recommend Tara
that
Brach Rain.
Okay, awesome. I love it. I love it. So we were talking a little bit before we started about a training that you had done, and I really want to have this conversation because I thought it was extremely interesting about mindfulness-based stress reduction. You are trained in mindfulness-based stress reduction, which I think is, we're sort of hitting on that too with somatic experience, and it's all intertwined. But you told me that it was interesting because this particular training, you have worked pretty extensively with people who self-described over drinkers, people that are drinking more than they want to for years. And you were told that it's basically not appropriate, or that people that can't do MSBR, did I do that right?
MBSR.
MBSR. I'm like, wait a minute, did I do
It's
that right? I did
okay.
it again. MBSR. That they can't do it unless they're a year out of recovery, like because
Right.
with alcohol, because practitioners are concerned about the whole addiction side of it. And I
Yeah.
thought that was really interesting, not because, I mean, of course we have to be always mindful of people that are truly physically dependent on alcohol, and I say that all the time. This podcast is not directed at people who are physically dependent, and if you are physically dependent, there are medical precautions that you might need to take before you address the psychological dependence. But I will say it many times, there have been studies done, and most heavy drinkers, most people who could be considered heavy drinkers, and probably people that are drinking more than they should be, are not. 9 out of 10 of them are not physically dependent. They probably have a psychological dependence. I know I sure did. And that is where I think mindfulness based stress reduction would be so important for those
So
people,
helpful. Yes, it would
right?
be. In theory, yes. It's funny because not funny, but when I was studying harm reduction psychotherapy, which I have a certification in, um, our teacher Andrew Tatarski used to say people generally aren't addicted to the substance; they're addicted to what they're getting from it.
Yeah.
So if you really understand what am I getting from this, and really deeply explore that issue, it's so important. And so that getting back to the MBSR, which is mindfulness-based stress reduction, it's an 8-week program, 2.5 hours. It's a great program. I highly recommend it. Unfortunately, they're a little short-sighted, or maybe they're going to come around now, but they would have, there was something in there you had to fill out that said, how many drinks you have per week or something. If it was over a certain amount, then you were not invited to participate in the program. This was something I didn't find out until I was partway through my training to become an MBSR teacher, because I thought, great, I'm going to offer MBSR to problem drinkers, because what a great thing.
Right.
And then I was told, no, actually, they're not allowed to take MBSR, which I was, it's still just, I'm kind of speechless.
Well,
But I think,
it's whatever,
mm,
at this point, it's kind of like for you, you're like, well, great. I won't teach them the whole class, but I'm going to certainly incorporate elements into your own program, which
exactly.
is just
Yeah.
what, I mean, whether or not they get the titled doesn't really
Yeah.
ultimately
No,
matter
doesn't
if
matter at
you're,
all. Right. So I took a lot of those elements and used them in my conscious drinking workshops. Um, but the point is that I think people are afraid of, addiction because of this black and white thinking that's been perpetuated, sorry, for so long. It is kind of perpetrated, but that people don't understand it's a spectrum, that if people are drinking problematically, it's because of something. It's a response to something. And if they can learn mindfulness-based stress reduction, if they can learn ways of regulating their emotions and their nervous systems, then they're less likely to drink. I think they're worried that, oh, MBSR might trigger something. They might have to go and have a drink after class. Yes, so what?
yeah.
Lots of things are going to trigger them emotionally. But they might learn a little bit more about what it is that's triggering them. What feels intolerable for them.
Well, and I know you know of the work of Dr. Adi Jaffe, and I spoke with him on
Mm-hmm.
the podcast. His whole book, The Abstinence Myth, and this whole idea that our focus even with recovery. So even if you take it back to people that are physically dependent, the focus of most recovery programs is simply that don't ever drink again.
Yeah.
That's I mean, it's like we're not addressing those core issues. We just simply say, okay, if you never drink again, you're cured. So
Yeah.
that's, you know what I mean? That's the
Yeah.
focus. And the same, so then we just scale it back, right? To people that are not physically dependent. Alcohol is a progressive, alcohol use disorder is progressive. So if you are problematically drinking and you're still in the mild to moderate disorder, eventually you could, if you continue down that pattern with enough time and repetition, develop severe alcohol use disorder, develop
Mm-hmm.
a physical dependency.
Mm-hmm.
So why not address it way back in the beginning, which is what you're talking about? It's like
Exactly.
that's the whole thing. That's where all of the work that I do too. I really, even for myself, who I would have never even identified as a problem drinker, I would have never identified. The only reason for myself personally, I think that in terms of the physical outcomes, right? I was still very successful. I had a successful career. I had a successful family. People would have never looked at me and thought, oh, she struggles with alcohol use. But because of living with my alcoholic mother, and for 40 years of my life, I had an overwhelming amount of anxiety with the amount that I was drinking all the time, carrying it with me,
Mm-hmm.
worrying about it,
Mm-hmm.
worrying about whether or not I was going to cross the threshold and become physically dependent, worrying about just my alcohol use because of a very of my upbringing. But it was interesting that I never looked at it and thought, I literally thought, well, like I can't do anything about it. Like I can't change my drinking habits. I can't change my drinking habits. I'm never going to be able to get rid of the anxiety because of my alcoholic upbringing. And so I just accepted it as, okay, well, that's just the way that my life is going to be. I never really understood the connection of where that disconnect was, that I was creating these feelings in and of in myself by what I was thinking about all the time.
Mm-hmm.
And once
Yeah.
I figured all that out, then then it was like the same. I was like, oh, okay, you know what? I can actually handle these emotions. I can actually do this myself.
Yeah.
And I
Yeah.
don't need to keep drinking. And by the way, if I can change this habit, I'm going to have a lot less anxiety, which I did.
Yeah. Right. And so many people don't seek help because they don't no, traditionally there's only been one way or the other. There's only been either you join a program and quit or you keep drinking, you
Right.
know. Up until recently, there hasn't been this idea of harm reduction and moderation and tools that you can learn to actually drink less in every kind of situation. And a lot of that does involve emotional regulation. Um, Some of it involves, I like to say it's the external tools and the internal tools, right? The
Yeah.
external tools would be like pace yourself with the slowest drinker, count, track your drinking, um,
Plan ahead. I'm a
plan
big
ahead,
advocate.
all of
Yes.
those things. Yeah.
Yeah.
Um, there's always things you can't plan for. There's always some emotional thing that's going to come up that you can't plan for. And the other thing you have to plan for, in my opinion, is the appearance of the inner negotiator,
Yeah.
which is the part of you that shows up after you've made your perfectly well thought out plan that you're only going to drink two or you're not going to drink at all or whatever it is. And the inner negotiator comes up and says, "Hey, I got this really, really good idea. Let's drink more."
Yeah. Yeah.
So you have to plan
I
for
call
that.
that I call that my toddler brain. That's my toddler, my
Yeah,
impulsive, my person who just, my little toddler who just wants it now, who needs
yeah.
it, who wants that instant gratification, who has no concern for long-term goals or higher level thinking. She just wants it now.
Yeah, yeah. And I hope that you're nice to that little toddler. I hope you give her a little hug. Say, I see what you're trying to do for me. You're just kind of misguided. That's all. She's
Yeah.
trying to help out.
That's you are sweet to your. I am yeah, I guess I tell her I don't I think I'm more like the parent, right?
The
Like,
stern parent.
well, the parent that's like, yeah, no, sorry, that's not, that's not where we're headed here. This is I know what my logical adult brain wants, the goals that I have in place. And
Hmm.
I mean, I also think that, and I talk about that a lot here, is being prepared ahead of time for when the toddler wins that war,
Hmm.
because
Yeah,
as a parent, I certainly, we can, at least for myself as a parent, I know, I've given into a toddler, right? So the adult
yeah.
doesn't always win in this scenario, even when
And it's interesting that you bring in the toddler because one of the things I think you asked me about previously was about the use of hypnosis
yeah,
in
yeah, I
for
want to
problem drinking.
definitely.
And what I've found is that when I work with someone with using hypnosis, and I use the term loosely because really hypnosis is about being very present. It's really about understanding, going deeper into one's experience and being intensely present, not absent. It's not like I'm doing something to put you in a trance or something. I'm really just providing a space for my clients to relax deeply into themselves and to access deeper wisdom. Um, and and sometimes what will happen is we'll go back and they can talk to me while this is happening. They can tell me about what they're experiencing. And so I might say to somebody, say somebody has their issue is binge drinking. They
Hmm.
can drink
Go up,
a
yeah.
glass of wine with dinner, no problem. But there's that occasional time out with friends where they just crazy. And so we might regress back to, what does this feel? Well, first of all, what's the somatic experience of this? What does this feel like in your body to sort of, keep this going kind of thing? And then they might regress back to like college days or something, that makes sense. Okay, but maybe there's something else. Let's see if we can go a little bit younger. And then suddenly they're 5 years old at McDonald's, right? With having the time of their lives playing. I don't have kids, so I don't know what they have to do at McDonald's, but I understand these places have
Let's
things
play
to
structures,
do.
yeah.
Yeah. So they're playing with all the stuff and just having like a crazy happy, crazy excited. Never want it to end, never want it to end. And then I'll say, well, then what happens? And there's like uh, their face changes, their eyes start to well up, breathing shallows, and they'll say, my mom says we have to go home. And I'll say, what is home? What does that mean? And so home for this person might be, mom stares out the window all day, depressed, doesn't pay any attention
Mm-hmm.
to me, doesn't connect with me. So I'm lonely. So there's a point at which you can sort of like, what does that child need, to go in and kind of heal that situation, heal that poor child that's wanting this happiness and scared of what's going to happen at the end. Um, because it's so interesting to see how that influences the adult when they're out binge drinking, right? There's
Mm-hmm.
something that they don't want it to end because they don't want to feel this terrible loneliness or whatever it is that's going to happen that they think, because the 5-year-old thinks that. So then they can, once they understand that and they heal a little bit and maybe tell the 5-year-old whatever it needed to hear, um, then they can bring that 5-year-old with them into the drinking situation and just say, I know you're here. Let's update you a little bit. I'm an adult and I've
Let's
made this
update you.
decision. And, it's not going to be, we're going to go home and you're going to cry and things are going to be horrible. Okay. It's going to be okay. It's going to be okay. So you just want to bring that child in and just let it know that everything's going to be okay.
Wow, that is absolutely fascinating. I have to ask you, Beej, does it work on everyone? Does hypnosis work on everyone? Because I have this intense skepticism of hypnosis. I'm being completely transparent here, but as much as I'm interested in mindfulness and have practiced, a lot of this, hypnosis to me feels like something that I would never be successful. Like I could never let my brain get there. I don't know
Yeah.
why.
Yeah. And you might not. I mean, it really, I think I don't know that it can work for everyone. I haven't tried it on everyone, but
Right.
but I can say that there are certain clients of mine that I've had for years that I would never do that work with because I feel that they're not, for a couple of reasons. One is that I feel like it might just flood them a little too much
Mm-hmm.
to feel those things from the past. It might not have the healing effect that I want it to have, that I'd like it to have.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but as far as can you be hypnotized? It's like, can you relax is the
Right.
question.
Right.
It's really not about me, like I said, it's not about me doing something. It's more about, are you comfortable enough with me to let me go on this journey with you? It's more
Mm-hmm.
like that.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Interesting. Very interesting to me. I love I mean, it's really cool that you are able to help people tap into that, that toddler type experience and the older type memories. And I love the fact that you were like, okay, we're going to update you now. This is I love that. I love that concept. So talked with you more about, so you in you've been, as I mentioned in the intro, you've worked with moderation management for years. And I know in the beginning of the pandemic, you kind of saw a need for more assistance. You've worked a lot with people one on one, but you kind of developed a new program going into because of the need really that
Yeah.
arose, I think, out of the pandemic. Is that accurate?
Yeah, I wanted to be able to offer the all of the tools that I've learned that have helped with my clients, um, to in a group setting. This is something I've really been passionate about wanting to do since I took the MBSR training. That was my
Right.
idea,
Right.
and then it just kind of got sidelined, got busy with other things. But when I realized how well the Zoom meetings, moderation
Yeah.
management meetings were working, how well that transferred online, I thought this is a great opportunity to try my group program, because this is a way for people to learn these tools in in a group setting, B, not to have to pay me individually for all those sessions, um, there's something about the group experience that is so enriching, and just for them to come in and really get to know people that are struggling with the same issue, and to take away some of that shame that,
Yeah.
we've learned that that's what we should feel about this, unfortunately. And if there's one thing I want to do before I die, it's take away that. But
Right. Yeah.
yeah, but so what I've done is I created this program, Conscious Drinking 101 and Conscious Drinking 202. They're each 4-session workshops, where people work in a group setting on using these mindfulness practices and learning to apply them to drinking.
I love that. I
Hmm.
love that. I don't know about you, but this is from what I say with the work that I talk about with people, and I don't do any type of coaching yet in any way, but when I am on the podcast, I talk a lot about this kind of being a meta skill, learning this type of, because I think that once people figure out, or for me, I know that overcoming this unbreakable habit for me, the drinking was the place I needed to start, because it was just, that was where, kind of like I said, I did not realize how much anxiety I actually carried around that was created by the drinking habit itself.
Hmm.
And so for me, that was where I needed to start. And also because I really felt passionate about being able to tell a better story about
Hmm.
drinking, about changing
Hmm.
that habit again. Saying kind of like you, it's just like, this shouldn't be, there's a
Such a
lot of,
focus.
yeah, it shouldn't be. There's a lot of gray area there, folks. There's a lot between
Hmm.
black and white, and a lot of people who would be better served and would be feeling a lot better about their lives if they had a better answer to changing their drinking habits. But the sorry, I got kind of off track there, going in a different direction. But
That's
what
okay.
I was going to say is that the conscious drinking is, once people gather the skills that you're teaching in these two courses, 101 and 202, the things that you're teaching, the mindfulness practices that you're teaching, they can be applied to life. It's a
Absolutely.
meta skill. That's what I was
Yes.
really going with that.
Yes. Absolutely.
And so
Hmm.
are you, and I'm very gratified actually to see that people are one of the things that someone cautioned me about or said to me, which I think was really interesting, is that, and I love the fact that you do the work that you do, and we agree and align on these things. Somebody said to me, your message would be stronger, and I quote, my message would be stronger if you were not drinking at all. That's, I said, huh, interesting. Well, I guess I don't know what to say to that other than that wouldn't be true. So how could it be stronger if it's not true? And again, isn't that interesting that that's the thought process, that it's very black or white, like you either are or you aren't. So,
Yeah.
so,
Yeah.
but the group dynamic too, I love that. I hope that their learning, I think, is enhanced when we are all in a group setting.
Definitely, because you hear people having insights, and then that evokes your own insights. Um, Another thing that we really learn about is in the I mean, the reason I went with conscious instead of mindfulness and mindful drinking, which it is mindful drinking, but first of all, that word is just way overused. But anyway,
Right,
so it's like
right.
really bringing subconscious and unconscious parts of ourselves to consciousness.
Mm-hmm.
So we work with, there are four parts in particular that we work with: the inner critic, the inner negotiator, the inner rebel, the inner perfectionist. So it's really spending some time getting to know and like bringing them up into the conscious mind. So like when your inner negotiator is here, it's here. Oh, hello.
I
Hi.
love that. I
And it
love
comes in
those.
so many different forms for so many different people. And I don't know if we have time to go through any of these, but these are there are a bunch that are kind of uh, that show up for a lot of people, like
Tell,
the
yeah,
rebel. You can't tell me what to do. Screw it. I suppose if
right.
this is too long, you can always cut it. So I'll just um, the bully or the critic. You're going to screw up anyway, so just go ahead and drink. The enabler. You've already gone over the limits. You might as well toss moderation out the window. The
Right.
empathetic friend comes up. I'm sorry you're feeling sad. They shouldn't have treated you that way. This will make you feel so much better. Or, gosh, you've been working so hard. You deserve this. Or the whiny kid that you mentioned. I want this. Everyone else is doing this. Why can't I? Or the reasonable mentor. Well, you've only had 6.75 drinks this week, so I don't see any reason not to continue to drink this evening. And the list goes on, right? So, but it's for people to kind of get, and I do some exercises around this for people to see, like, what does theirs look like? What do they dress
Right.
like? How do they talk? How do they sound? So you recognize them when they show up. And then I have them in pairs kind of play around with this a little bit, like play around with each other's inner negotiators so that they actually have a face to it too. And they'll remember that, oh yeah, that Susie, oh yeah, that's funny. This person's showing up now, this inner negotiator.
I love that. And
So,
it's so true. I love that. My favorite has to be the inner, whatever the last one was, the analyst to the inner.
oh, the
I've only had
mentor,
the
the
6.7.
mentor. Yes.
Yeah, I've only had 6.75 drinks. You can have another one. That was
Right, right.
awesome.
Yeah,
Oh, wow. Well, Beej, you and I could probably talk all day long about all of this
absolutely.
because this is just right in both of our wheelhouses, and it's an important conversation for so many reasons, because you're absolutely right. Should be our mission to just get rid of shame. I know that Dr. Jaffe has has pretty clear sentiments on what I think he says F shame for the whole
Yeah.
world. That's like, his bracelets say it. And, which is, for me, I would have never associated with, I also want to talk to the people that aren't necessarily, I guess shame is one way of looking at it. More than anything, it's like they don't even know if they really have a they don't want to identify as having a problem, even, because it's like, you know what I'm saying? That's like, and I guess that's maybe because people have a fear of being shame based by society and what it means to not be happy with your drinking habits, right?
Yeah.
But yeah, I want people to know that the resources exist. They exist. Moderation management exists, and Beej Christie Karpen exists, and you can go check her out. You're a sponsor over there at MM. You can find out more about your both your one-on-one coaching and then the group coaching efforts as well. Is there any place else that you want people to connect with you?
You could take a look at my website if you'd like. It's Insight Out, INSIGHTOUTNYC.com.
Yeah, just in case
Rolls right
anyone.
off the tongue.
Yeah. InsightOutNYC.com. And I will link that in my show notes, everyone. Beej, thank you so much for being here. I know, like I said, people, just the rain and the whole putting your hand on your chest for 60 seconds, all of these things, just those little tidbits out of this conversation are going to be super helpful for people.
Great. And thank you, Molly, for the work you do. It's
so
important, really.
Well, I appreciate it. And, maybe you'll come back again and we'll have another conversation.
I'd love to.
All right. Awesome. Thanks, Beej.
Thank you. Take care.
Thank you for listening to Breaking the Bottle Legacy. This podcast is dedicated to helping you change your drinking habits and to create a peaceful relationship with alcohol. Take something that you learned in today's episode and apply it to your life this week. Transformation is possible. You have the power to change your relationship with alcohol now. For more information, please visit me at www.mollywatts.com.